Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us as part of Class 4's interview process. We have a great group of applicants and are really excited to get to know them a little bit better in a couple of weeks. Everyone has signed up for an appointment slot already, so what I will walk through today is an overview of our interviewing process and the tone that we want to set, as well as a technical aspect of how to access all of the applications and our rubric, which we are doing all digitally for the first time. So I want to make you all feel really comfortable and confident in using those tools. Before I get into that, I just want to start off by saying that for our interviews, we like to set a really comfortable tone. We want School Board School to be a place where people feel welcome and they can be themselves. And that's something we want to carry throughout the entire learning program and beyond. And it really starts with this interviewing process. We've heard from previous classes that they really enjoyed these interviews, and it was an important part of why they were excited to join our coalition. So we just want to create that environment, again, where they see, friendly and maybe familiar faces and feel really comfortable in opening up. And that way we get, a real insight into their authentic answers and who they really are. So I will start off by walking through a little bit of the ins and outs of using some of our tools. In the email that I'll send you, I will include your specific interview dates again, so that you know how to access and where to access the appropriate materials. But what I'm showing here is we have a shared Google Drive with all of our interview dates. We have 4 dates this week. We have 21 individuals that we will be speaking with throughout this 4 days. And so in your email, look to see your particular interview date. You should have gotten this already, but just double check. And then what you'll come and see in these interview folders are all of these subfolders with that specific date. So you want to choose your interview date. So let's say that that's Wednesday, July 14th. And what you'll find here is subfolders for each of the people that we'll be visiting with that day. And so prior to those interviews, what we ask you to do is just to go through everyone's folders and take a look at their materials. So in each person's folder, you will find a few things. You will find a PDF of their application answers. So this is part 2 of the application with all of their essay responses. And you can take a look through that. You will also find references. Most people have 2 references. There are some that have just 1. That is okay. We're considering that to be a complete application. And then occasionally you might see someone that has more than the 2. But what you want to have pulled up as you review those documents is this Excel sheet that is our applicant rubric guide. So we are using this version, this digital version, for the very first time. We've done this in paper copy in past years. So hopefully this is going to make it a little bit easier for everyone to see all of our notes and our scoring in one place, and for you to have an easier time accessing a place to write your notes during the actual interview itself. So we use this rubric to make sure that we have an objective tool to measure each candidate, so that we're not just using our own gut. This rubric reflects research on what makes effective board members and advocates, as well as characteristics that we've seen be successful in school board school members. So everyone, is applying so that they can learn and grow. And we want to emphasize that we are not looking for perfection. We don't have to be at the high end of the rubric right now on everything, but create a space for folks to grow along with us. So during the interview, we will start with this tab down here of Constant Learner. And every interviewer is going to have certain questions that they will ask of each person, and that just helps make the interview flow really consistent for each applicant. So you will see There are questions on the left-hand side here under each competency, and in the red, we'll see who is asking that question. So Elisa and myself will take the first one, and we will work our way through these tabs on the bottom that represent all of our competencies, and ask the questions that way. So you'll see here interviewer 1 is asking that, and typically you as our guest are interviewer 1. On Saturday we do have 2 external guests, so you'll be 1 and 2, so just pay close attention up here on this top part where you'll see interviewer 1 or interviewer 2, where you should be marking your notes. So we will just work our way through all of the competencies down here. Like I mentioned, each person will ask the questions. Some questions have a part A and B, as you'll see here, for example, in the team player competency. So most often that A and B are asked by the same interviewer. So just make sure that you're familiar, just kind of look through each of these competencies and get familiar with the questions that you will be asking, so you're prepared to ask those when it's your turn. There are no questions for motivation or high expectations, but what you'll find at the bottom of each of these competency tabs is kind of a rubric here of what each score represents, some of the things to look at. So most scores, most rubric scales go from a 1, 2, and 3, with the exception of team player and constant learner. Those have a 1, 3, 4 scale. They're weighted competencies. We found that these 2 particular characteristics have been really instrumental in defining success and measure a little bit higher in terms of folks being able to be successful and effective. So we'll work our way again through each of these competencies, and what you'll be able to do as you go through the interview is under your particular interviewer column. So say you're interviewer 1, you will mark any notes for each of those questions right in your box here. They're color coded to hopefully make it really easy to view. So you'll write any of your notes under each of those questions as we go through, and then you will write or input an overall score at the very top here in row 2. Again, these scores are, you'll see the rubric up here on the very top left. You can do, a solid 1, 3, or 4. If you find that you are borderline between scores, you can give them a fraction of a score. So you can put, in here a 3.5, for example, if they, seem like they're a high 3 but not quite a 4 yet. You can do a fraction of a score. So you'll do that again for each competency. So we'll ask our flexibility question, write down any notes that you have in this open box here, and then your overall score up in row 2, however you're scoring that. So we'll do that for all of the competencies, again, from left to right as we go through, including motivation and high expectations based on, overall what you've read in the application, what you've heard in the interview. Although that these don't have particular questions, you'll still provide a score there. And then what will happen is there is a summary tab here at the very beginning, and you'll see as I entered in my scores, they auto-populated into this summary box here. So we've saved you the work of having to go back and do the math and average out the scores. You just want to plug it in each individual tab in row 2, and then we'll see the collective scoring at the very top of the summary page. So hopefully this makes it really easy for you. Once all of your scores are entered in, what you want to do is make sure you come back to the summary tab at the very beginning, and you want to answer these questions right here under your interviewer, under your particular interviewer box. So, if you're interviewer 1, Christy, for example, here, you want to, again, make sure that you're following your color coding, and you want to answer these 2 questions. Does this overall score feel right to you? So you'll see here, once you plug in all of the scores for each competency, you'll have this, this interview overall score. And so you'll take a look at that and say, does this feel right to you? And it'll give you a drop down of yes or no. So you want to mark your answer there and maybe give a little bit of a description in the box right next to it. And then you also want to answer, do you recommend this person for acceptance? So that scale is a definitely yes, a no, or a definitely not. You'll notice that we don't have a maybe option, and that's because we really do want to make some clear, decisive choices about who's moving forward, and then again offer a note section there to write down any thoughts, clarifying notes, etc. If there is someone that maybe you're on the fence about and just need a little bit of a discussion, we will have a debrief and discussion at the very end of our interviews for that day. So we will walk through everyone that we've seen and just share, yes, we're moving them forward, or, if there are any questions or just need to talk through any applicant, we have an opportunity to do that. And so if you're, on here kind of on the fence, that's a time that you can raise those points. We're looking for people who score at least a solid, which is a 2 across all of the competencies. We found that if anyone scores a 1 in any particular competency, that they are usually a 1 across the board. And so, these are really kind of our non-negotiables, is anyone that's scoring a 1 or so, tend to not be, good fits right now, for the program. So want to look for applicants again that are at least a solid 2 across all of our competencies. And so that can be, a point of discussion once we get to that debrief, at the end of our day. We don't have a specific number of people to accept per day. As I mentioned, we have about 22 folks applying that will go through this interview process. So if they're all fantastic, which hopefully they are, we've had some good applications, we can absolutely move them all forward. We have the ability to do that. We just want to make sure that they are a good fit. So we're not looking at, the particular number. We just want the candidates and the people who are really going to commit and be able to contribute to this experience. We, as staff members, will interview all of the candidates and put together recommendations from each day's interviews. So if there are any hard calls, we may reach back out to you after all of the interviews are over and just get, some final thoughts there. And so appreciate all of your, your guidance and discussion points, and really take a lead from your best thinking. But we'll take all of that and make our final decisions after we wrap up all 4 days of our interviewing. We ask that you not share the access to this Google Drive with anyone, or share the information about the applicants. We know Cincinnati is small and you may know some people, which is totally fine. That's actually at times really helpful to our interviewing process to fill in some gaps potentially. But just making sure that we keep this information confidential until all of our decisions are made and we as school board school release the names for our 2021 cohort. This includes, both the application and the references. And Again, as you go through and read, their applications and their references, you can go ahead and start using this rubric to make any notes in the particular competencies. If there are things that you want to just, take into consideration before even going into the interviews, you can start using this rubric and making some notes. At that point, you wouldn't be doing any scoring, of course, but you can at least write some thoughts that might be helpful for you. Then we do ask you, in your scoring to consider not just their answers, but also what you've read in the applications and references. So that is kind of the summary and overview of this rubric. We hope that it is easy to use kind of once you get familiar with it. But again, just to recap, we have our summary box, or a summary tab here, which will auto-populate with all of your scores. And then once you're finished with all of your scoring, you will come back to the summary tab and fill in these 2 questions of whether the overall score feels right and whether you recommend that person. And then all of the tabs down here on the bottom with each competency, and the interview questions with the person who is going to ask that question. So you'll put in all of your notes, put in your score in row 2. We kept the format, consistent so that you always know where the score is and where your notes are. And we'll just run through each of those competencies, put in our scores, and again, those will be auto-populated here in the summary tab. The very last 2 tabs, you'll see an Other Notes tab. This is primarily for Elisa when she does our opening and closing for the day, just some notes for here. But you'll see at the very bottom, there's open sections for you to write any additional notes that may not fit under a particular competency, but you still want to share on this form. And then you'll also see this interviewer info tab, which is just, again, a summary of everything that I just walked through. So the applications and what you can find there, the rubric and why we use this rubric, along with, each of the competency tabs and the summary tabs and how that auto-populates, and then the interview itself. So we ask you, again, to build a really friendly, welcoming environment. We're signing on about 15 minutes before our first interview time. That is already built into your calendar invite. So if our day starts at 9, your calendar invite was sent for 8:45. So that's already taken into account there. And then just the section on the debrief and discussion that at the end of each day we'll have time to talk through everyone that we've seen, and align on scores and recommendations. So that is it for our rubric. Again, I will share a link with everyone to your particular interviewing folder. So depending on which day you're interviewing, I will send you a link for that folder. And then if you have any questions or run into any issues accessing any of the files, you know where to find me. You can feel free to email me or give me a call at 717-519-9766, and I'm happy to help troubleshoot any of those issues. Again, thank you so very much for helping us in this process. We really do value the perspective that you all bring in considering the diversity of the community members that apply for the program. And we look forward to building another really great class.